Welcome to Fuller Expectations, the podcast where we dive into topics like aging with confidence, navigating identity shifts, building new healthy habits, rediscovering purpose, health and wellness routines in midlife, and yes, maybe even money, retirement, relationships, and letting go of things that no longer serve you. I'm your host, Carrie Fuller, and I am so excited that you're here with me today. My hope is that our episodes feel like a blend of personal growth, real conversation, and gentle encouragement. We'll keep things honest, thoughtful, and practical. If you have not already, please hit follow so that our podcast can appear in your podcast library. We drop episodes every week, and we don't want you to miss it. And if you thought of somebody who might benefit by what you've heard today, please share this episode with them. And now let's get into today's episode. Hello, Fuller Expectations podcast family. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have a really exciting episode today because it literally applies to every single person. We all have to save our money for our retirement, right? So we are talking about financial wellness as a path to purpose and designing the life that you will love in your next chapter. And we have a special guest with us today who is so well-versed on this topic. We have Sylvia Guinan. She is Managing Director and Investments Financial Advisor with the Guinan Group. The Guinan Group is a financial strategies group, part of Wells Fargo Advisors, and Sylvia has been in this industry for over 25 years. She is very passionate about helping clients take control of their financial futures. As a certified divorced financial analyst, Sylvia specializes in guiding individuals, especially women, through major life transitions such as divorce. Her planning-driven approach covers wellness and investment management. It covers retirement income planning and insurance and asset protection, as well as legacy planning and philanthropy strategies for those who are interested in giving back. So by collaborating with CPAs and attorneys and other professionals, Sylvia truly helps ensure that every aspect of her clients' financial lives are seamlessly integrated. At the heart of her practice are what Sylvia calls the 3 C's: clarity, confidence, and control. Acting as a personal CFO, Sylvia helps clients understand the true cost of divorce while creating realistic and optimistic plans for their future. Her mission is to provide stability, education, and guidance so that families can thrive no matter what challenges they face. So Sylvia, as you can see, is so perfect for this conversation today as we talk about financial wellness as a path to purpose and designing the life that you will love in your next chapter. Hi, Sylvia. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am super excited about this episode, and I just want to welcome you to the Fuller Expectations podcast.
Thank you again for inviting me. I'm really looking forward to spending some time with you on this.
Thanks so much. So we're going to get started with a little bit about your background. So your background in wealth management is so perfect for this conversation today. So let's start with talking a little bit about that and sharing with our listeners a little bit about what drew you into the world of finance and why financial wellness becomes so important, especially in midlife.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I started in New York City over 25 years ago, which seems like such a long time now, but I always loved it. And I think that for me, I really loved talking about what matters most to people. When you're working around finance, I think that, that discussion is essential, right? Because we want to know, again, a kid's relationship, family. The money is wonderful, but we really want to make sure that we're using that money in a way that is meaningful to our clients. So I love that, again, the conversation's always revolving about the client, and everyone is different and individual, and it's really fun to create customized plans to help people meet their needs.
Financial wellness is truly a part of overall wellness. So let's talk about how money stress can impact health and relationships and quality of life. And what are your thoughts on financial planning truly being a form of self-care?
I think there's not enough talk about that. And I think that is such a great question. I had, I do some speaking on the topic and had done some research, and I thought it was fascinating that I found that the American Psychological Association had done a study of over 4,000 people, and interestingly enough, they said that the number one stressor for most of their respondents was finances. And I dug in a little bit deeper into the research, and it was very interesting to see that it wasn't even necessarily what people had accumulated or had not accumulated. It was more about the fear of, am I going to be okay in the future? And am I going to be able to meet my goals? Or what if something goes wrong? And again, the beautiful thing about all of that is that it can be solved, right, with planning. You have a financial plan and you kind of address all of those things and create a sense of clarity. And I do think that, right, stress is the number one, I think, killer. I think, we do so much to our bodies when we are stressed and holding in fear and holding in pain that I think that if we can create clarity around our investments, I think there's a certain amount of stress that can ultimately be alleviated. So again, I think it's very important. And there's a quote by Jewel, the singer. I love in one of her songs, she said, sometimes in life, light is the darkness most feared. And I think that we do create a lot of stress about not wanting to face the finances, or am I going to be okay, or, all of those things. But I think that, like anything else, the minute that we face it and we kind of conquer it or come into clarity around it, we realize it's really not that bad, right? It goes away. So very important, I think, to really take care of your finances. And I think that it'll help with stress, with relationships, and with your overall well-being.
Yeah. And I think too, in midlife, especially, the thoughts around retirement start to feel more real than they ever did before. And when you add to that, the fact that some people are supporting adult children and they're also caring for aging parents, and they're doing this maybe at the same time, and they might also be experiencing changes in their career or, relationships. And so it's not just one big change, but it's so many things. So, what can you offer for feedback to our listeners who may be at this part of their life and they just feel like they need a lifeline with all of that stuff going on, maybe at the same time?
Yeah, again, I think with all of those things going on, the most important thing is planning, right? Because it can get expensive if we have to be caring for our parents, right? Our aging parents. And then, there's a new dynamic, right? That we've funded or hopefully assisted in funding our children going through college, going through education. But then all of a sudden, right? Like the job market is not quite as robust as we would have hoped. And a lot of kids are planning on landing at home for a little while until they can launch. And on all these things can get very expensive. So I think that, again, having a plan and figuring out with these added expenses, how you could still maybe save a little bit for yourself or save a lot, or, what you can do, I think would help. And I do also feel that, right, at this age, we don't have a lot of time.
Yeah. And there's several foundations for strong financial future. And I think something that's really important to share is the fact that it's never too late to start. And the foundation's really around emergency savings and investing in the retirement accounts and planning around that. Can we talk about some of those areas from your experience and a little bit more around what the foundations are for a strong financial future?
Absolutely. And I think you're right. It's never too late. And I think so many times that we wait and we say, well, it's not the right time right now, or I have a lot going on right now and I can't. And it's just like anything else, like, right, we probably been waiting for the perfect time to have our children. We may not have had them, we just can't time some of these things. So I think we have to come to grips with there may not be a perfect time, but it's always a great time to start. So it's never going to feel like the perfect time. And a little bit goes a long way. And again, starting with a little bit now, you start to build up momentum and you start to see a little bit of progress, and then you start to get excited, and then life shifts and changes and things ease up. So I think that what you said is key. I think it's never too late. And even if you have a plan and you've been saving, your goals change. We talk a lot. Sometimes we all get so busy with our lives, we're not even talking to our partners about what our retirement really looks like, what our goals are. And the biggest fear would be to get there and then not be aligned on what you want and what you think that should look like. So I think it's important to actually have conversations with your spouse about what you envision, right, retirement to look like, what you want to do, what they want to do in retirement, and then figure out where the alignments are. And if not, where we can compromise to make those things happen. So very important. And it isn't late. And, you mentioned what I call a rainy day fund. Yeah, we should always have some liquidity, right? If anything happens or shifts or there's an emergency. And, the rule of thumb is to have about 3 months available in assets to carry you and all of the expenses if something were to go wrong. In our practice, we like to do 6 to 9 months just in case. It doesn't hurt to have more available for an emergency. And there's certain things that you could do too. That the money doesn't just have to be sitting and not earning. We've put it in money markets, we ladder CDs, we could do different things with that money. So it's still growing somewhat, but you still have that safety net.
When we talk to our kids about this topic, like I'm always saying, I have a 28-year-old son, and I'm always saying to him, put some, he's got his first big boy job, and I'm always telling him, make sure that you're contributing the most that you can into your retirement account. And to your point, I don't think that some people understand how fast that grows. And when we think about how fast time goes by anyway, it really year over year can look so different. And you might not feel like you're contributing enough, but something, as much as you can, is better than nothing, right?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And then, when they're young too, they have opportunities to put it into a Roth IRA versus a regular IRA. Now, a lot of employers are offering Roth 401ks, which there is no limit on what you make, right? So you pay your taxes now and then you invest. And to me, I like predictability, right? So when I'm building my clients' plans, it's just kind of nice to know sometimes that there's a bucket with tax-free money that you're not going to have to pay out. You pull it out and it's yours. There's a really great thing to be said for having that. And with the younger ones too, I think, getting started early, like you said, is essential. And I know a lot of times they'll say, oh, well, it's a bad market, or look at what's happening, the market's down. I think, again, we have to change the way we think about that. It's almost like going shopping and things are on sale, right? So if you went to Nordstrom's and you saw a leather jacket you liked and it was $500, and all of a sudden you come in the next day and it's on sale for $325, you're not going to say, well, I'm not going to buy it, it's broken or something's wrong with it. You're probably going to try it on, fits well, you're going to buy it, and now you feel like you saved money, so you may pick up the scarf and the glove to go with it. It's a good opportunity, and that's the same thing. I mean, I think especially when we're dealing with retirement and it's a long-term horizon, those pullbacks in the market are actually, I think, a gift.
Yeah, that's so true. And I talk about this with my friends a lot too, the fact that we're all not yet at retirement, but closer than we have been ever before. And the market does seem scary, but to your point, it's a long-term thing. So just the fluctuations might scare people, but that doesn't mean that they shouldn't participate in it. And I think a lot of people who kind of shy away from it might be missing the opportunity to really see their savings grow over time.
Absolutely. And, you have different buckets of investment. Even if you're getting older or closer to retirement, you're going to have your stock buckets and you're going to have your bonds and your liquidity buckets. So you'll have different things to pull from if things do get a little bit volatile short term. But I think, again, even when we are retiring, from my standpoint, we still have a long-term time horizon, because the reality is we're not pulling it all out at once. It's not like we were saving to buy a house and we're going to need liquidity, or it's a whole different dynamic. You're saving for your future. So you want to make sure you have some risk management tools in there just to make sure that you are able to come up with what you need on an annual basis, right, to fund your retirement. Because as your financial advisor, right, we become your payroll during retirement. We're paying you. So, at least when we're building out models in our team, we're creating strategies that whether the market's up, down, or sideways, we have a strategy to get our clients paid what they need on an annual basis. So it kind of helps alleviate some of the stress with market volatility. But the reality is, like I said, people are retiring, in their 60s, some mid to late 60s, but life expectancy now, people are living well into their 90s. That's a pretty long time to have to fund your retirement. So you do need some different asset classes, some different allocations in there, because you're going to want some growth. You're going to want some stability, and you're going to want some growth.
So true. When you think about it, we work with different professionals on so many different things. Even if you think about going to get your hair done or going to get your nails done and things like that, it looks very different if you try to do those things yourself. So there's definitely some really important aspects to this that people should definitely work with somebody that is in wealth management and knows what they're doing and the best way to structure these things. So,
and I would even say someone, I think that you want an advisor with experience, and you want somebody that you can connect with, someone that really you feel comfortable, because ultimately to me, our client relationships end up being really tight relationships, and we really make it a point to have a trust factor where our clients call us for everything. If something good happens, we're one of the first calls. If something bad happens, we're one of the first calls. If there's a fear or concern, we're one of the first calls. And that's really like, to me, what the dynamics of a good wealth management relationship with an advisor should be, right? It should be that almost there as always sounding board for our clients and to help inspire them so that they can feel confident. But you said something that I thought was really interesting, that you and your girlfriends talk about retirement getting closer and stuff. I had done a presentation not too long ago to a women's group. And, one of the things that I kind of joked about, but is so true, right? We talk to our friends about everything. We talk to our friends about our beauty regimen. We talk about, whatever we do cosmetically to improve or enhance our looks. We talk to them about our relationships, our partners, our kids, our sex life. I mean, everything, right? But you would never talk about money. For the most, women will not share, and men too, right? Specifically about money. And, the reality is, like I said at the beginning of our conversation, it's one of the scariest things, one of the biggest stressors that we all have. So you're kind of alone in this private little place by yourself without somebody usually to bounce it off. And I think that that's why, even more so, a relationship with a great advisor that you connect with on a great level and understands you and really does comprehensive planning. They're not just there to just pick stocks for you, but really our view and our practice is the financial plan and everything that the clients share with us about their goals, their fears, their desires, their legacy that they want to leave. Those are the things that drive the investment process. So all of the strategies that we like to create are very customized based on each client. And that's how it should be, right? It's not one size fits all. I think there's a lot of customization that should be done to help the client.
That is such a great segue to money being so emotional. And so let's talk about that. So there's a lot of people, like you said, people might not necessarily want to talk to their friends and stuff about money. We always talk about like, what do you want to do in retirement and like traveling and all that stuff. But actually talking about finances is a whole different thing. So some people might feel really behind. And sometimes if they do, they might avoid talking about this all together, even with their spouse. And it just causes like feeling of overwhelmed and just feeling like they're not where they should be. So what can you share with our listeners about this and how maybe they could build confidence in this area through just small steps?
Again, I think that a lot of times we find that we do feel our clients feeling uncomfortable. And I think that the important thing is to somebody that is not there to just tell you what to do, but is going to educate you. And I know in our practice, we actually love, like, it's educating. And if somebody doesn't feel like they understand it, like really spending time to get them to feel empowered, right, over their money, over their decisions. And I think it's about finding, to me, the right fit of who you could work with or align with in doing your planning. And and I think even in relationships, I think it gets uncomfortable. Our team, we work a lot with corporate executives. We work a lot with people going through transitions, like divorce. And on the divorce side, it's 9 out of 10 times the wife will tell you there's a lot of shame and embarrassment that she has no idea what they have. She has no idea if they were where it is, if they're going to be okay, how she would survive. And you really see it and feel it. And, again, our philosophy around that is you can't look backwards, right? And you were dividing and conquering at a certain time, right? Maybe you were raising the kids or you were working and raising the kids, whatever it is. If you didn't learn then, no shame around it, but like now it's time to learn. And the other thing is I'll be speaking to the Greenwich Junior League at the end of March and talking about, again, wellness with money, kind of like what we're talking about right now, like, right, emotional and mental wellness around money. And I think that, again, it's trying to encourage women to, even if they're in happy relationships and everything's great, life unfortunately happens, right? Some people get sick, people die, there's accidents, there's divorce, and you don't want to have to learn it when you're under emotional duress, right? It's hard enough to learn it when you're not. So I think it's always a good time that when things are okay, even though it's not your ideal topic, to really kind of make it a point to speak to your partner or to reach out to somebody and to start learning, while you can, right? Because again, doing it when you're under emotional duress is like probably the most difficult thing to have to do. And it is, back to that topic of conversations, right? Just like I love what you said, maybe talking to our girlfriends in general about getting nervous about retiring in the future and maybe what the vision is, if we can do what we want to do is great. But I think it's conversations with your spouse. And a lot of times we'll hear, we've been married 25 years and we never really talk about the finances, and it would be weird for me to bring it up right now. But it's really not, right? You're sharing a life, and there's finances, and there's kids, and there's certain things that you need to do some planning around. And start conversations when you haven't had it with your spouse, starting conversations with your children, starting conversations with your aging parents, right? About what kind of planning have they done? What do they have? What's their vision? We do a lot of meetings now as our clients are getting a little bit older, and their parents are getting older and they have kids that are young adults. We do family meetings now, and we really kind of talk about, what's most important to the family. And I like our clients' kids, especially, to hear from mom and dad. We don't have to share dollar amounts and what was saved and what we have or what all the trust and tell, but I want them to hear from both parents what the vision is for the family, right? Like what their goal is, from a legacy standpoint, very general, but what they plan on leaving. Some of the kids, could be surprised that, even though there's a lot of wealth, the parents think it's too much wealth and they don't want to leave it for the kids, and they're going to leave a lot to legacy. And that would be, if you're banking on that, you could be very unpleasantly surprised. So I think it's important that the kids know, and these conversations are great. And the other thing that we haven't talked about, though, is even as parents, right? I think, we see so much with the kids when one of the parents becomes ill or they're both not doing well. And it's not that it's anything bad, right? Everyone's got their view on how mom and dad should be taken care of. But, those views could be very different. And what you don't want, right, is your kids arguing at that time. So again, having these meetings in advance as a family planning meeting and having mom and dad say, listen, if I become ill, I don't want to go anywhere. I want somebody to come to the house. I want to be cared for. We have a long-term care policy, or we don't, but this is what we could do. Or if something happens to mom, this is how we want to handle it. I just think the more clarity we can create, it's going to be, again, a loss and a very stressful time in their lives. And you don't want them guessing on what should happen. So these are all planning conversations that are so important to have.
That is so true. I think, it's interesting because we have 5 kids in our house and they're all adults now and everything, but we recently visited with our attorney and we got together all the documentation and updated all of the trust information and things like that. And I think it's really important, if you're someone who did that years and years ago, and the kids are now older, to revisit that, because things do change.
They do. We keep something in for our clients. We call it a financial strategy plan, but it has everything in there that somebody would need to know about you if something goes wrong, right? So it has everything from who the trust and estate attorney was, to the dates that it was last drafted, to the power of attorney, the healthcare proxy, who all the doctors are, who the financial advisor is, which is us, the accountants, the everything, right? If there's stuff at the bank, at a lockbox, where the key is, how to access it. Many times too, I don't like to keep the actual password information in there, but we usually allude to a place where they can find all the passwords to all the accounts if something were to go wrong. So again, to me, this is kind of a document that becomes your financial hub. And getting all that out of your head and into one document really, I think, helps clients feel less stressed and feel a little bit more relaxed. If something were to happen, everything is pretty much in a nice little box in order.
That is a true gift. And I think for our listeners, either, consider that for themselves, and especially for those of our listeners who might be caring for older parents, to try to make sure that that is done so that they know how to handle everything and how their parents would want things handled. So let's talk about investing in the life you want. And we've had episodes that focus on investing in your overall wellness and investing in relationships. And financial wellness is another area that I feel like those are the 3 important areas of your life: the wellness, the relationships, and financial wellness. So especially at this stage of life, and it's all about small steps over time. We talked a little bit about that, and it doesn't happen overnight. So what are your thoughts on aligning financial goals with personal values? We talked a little bit about that, but really designing a fuller second half of life with intention and with purpose. And you did share a little bit about that. Is there anything more that you wanted to offer around that?
Oh, yeah, no, that is a great question. And I think a lot of our clients, and, I'm sure a lot of your speakers, we've worked so hard our whole lives, right, to amass some of the savings that we have are in our homes and all of that. And I think it's very important really to think about the legacy that you want to leave behind and how you want to leave that, right? And what feels good to you. And also, in the meantime, too, how do we bring our kids to be good stewards of money if they're going to be inheriting it? So educating the kids as you're going along, because again, you don't want them to have to learn how to manage these things when there's, a life-changing event. So very important to have those conversations. And, and I think, we didn't talk about this too, but I think that we need to rebrand the way we talk about finances, right? Especially like with our partners or our spouse. I mean, if I said to you, Carrie, let's get together, we're going to have a finance meeting discussion on our future goals. Like, it just sounds like very heavy. It doesn't sound like fun. So we talk to our clients about rebrand it, right? Like, so instead of that, say to your spouse, like, I want to, let's have a date night and let's talk about the future us. Like, what that's going to look like, right? Let's talk about what we want our next 10 years to look like, whatever it is, and you make it fun. We have couples in our practice that actually look forward to their date night where they're planning for their next year, and they taking the stress off of making it what we can't have or what we're not targeting or what's different or what we have to change, to just, more open discussion. And, and what I would suggest around that too, right, is talk about the future you, in 10 years when you're retired, or talk about what you want, envision, right? And try not to work on the dollars first and shoot each other down on why that couldn't happen, but work on the overall vision first, and then we can create a plan, right, to talk about how maybe to support those dreams and make that happen. And again, in those instances too, right, you share that, right, like we ask our clients share all of that with us, and then it's kind of fun because we're a financial kind of neutral there, and we're able to kind of balance things and help things move along. And, and we're a great place too to check in, right? How are we targeting? Are we exceeding expectations? Are we maybe lagging a little bit behind? And if we are, what adjustments do we have to make? But again, I do think it's rebranding the way we talk about it is
I love
helpful
that.
too.
Yeah, that's perfect. And the flip side of that is things that people should avoid. So I'm sure you've seen a lot. And can you share some common missteps that people might make, even like in their 40s or 50s or even beyond that, and maybe some simple proactive strategies around the mishaps?
It's gotten a lot better, but I think a common theme throughout the years is clients being at a cocktail party and their friends are investing in XYZ, and let's go ahead and do that. Or, why aren't we 100% in the S&P and things like that. So I think trying to just chase something or trying to do what somebody else is doing, I think that's when we get ourselves in trouble. I've always been of the philosophy that if you really have your goals aligned with your investment allocation and strategy, and that's your index, the S&P is not your index. Your index is your personal situation and what you have, right? So, Carrie, I might need to take a little bit more risk in my portfolio to grow it because maybe you've saved a little bit more, right? Or, maybe you've earned the right to not have to take as much risk, or maybe you have different priorities from a legacy standpoint than I have, so everybody's just different. So I think that the mistake that I would avoid is, and by the way, everyone always tells you how, especially among certain friend circles and stuff, how great they're doing and their investments is so great, but they don't tell you really what didn't work out so well. So again, I think it's always just, you listen, but I think again, make sure that when you're thinking about what you're going to do, that it really aligns with your values, your goals, your plans, I think is key.
And that's a really great takeaway. I think we're going to get into some small takeaways that listeners can make that would really make an impact now on their financial future. I think that's a great one. Are there other practical takeaways that you would want to share with listeners, small ways that people can make an impact now that would really change their financial future?
We do have a couple of different papers on it and articles that we would be happy to share. If they wanted to just reach out to me, happy to have some stuff sent over to them. But I think that the three things is, always get started. Right. And if you are already started, right, don't just assume that it's on task, just like you have to update your trust and documents and all that, you really want to be updating your overall plan, be updating your goals. And three, I think sometimes the investments are in place and the home is in place and everything's in place, but we have a blind spot, right? So what if one of you or your spouse gets sick, or what if something happens? Is there enough liquidity to cover that? Do you want to draw all your assets down? Does it make sense to have some insurance in there to protect each other? Right? So whether it's insurance to buy out the rest of the mortgage and to leave some liquidity for the other partner, whether it's some type of a long-term care strategy, right? If one of you, a husband and wife, one of you gets sick, I think what a lot of times we don't think about is, oh, I have accounts in my name and he has accounts in his name, and it doesn't matter. Like, it's all still seen as one pot, and you have to draw down your assets quite significantly. The number somewhere into the $120,000 range before you can get help from the state. Otherwise, you have to spend everything down. Your house can't be worth a certain amount. I think it used to be like $720,000. I'm not sure what the number is now. But again, I think putting in risk management tools also is important. And again, insurance isn't just buying insurance just to say, oh, well, I have insurance. I think, again, it really kind of works beautifully if you think about in your plan and what exactly it is that you're protecting for and how it becomes a tool. And they're also a great way to leave some legacy for the kids. It's also a great way to protect, your real estate. If the vision was to keep some of the real estate in the family, but there's still outstanding loans and there's going to be an estate tax. Do you have some insurance in there to protect so that the kids could use that to pay off the mortgages, pay off the estate tax, and then have the legacy to create their future? Mm-hmm. So I think that those are all things that are really, really important. The last thing I would say, if there is a transition in your life, like a divorce or a loss, making sure that you're always updating the beneficiary information on your accounts, right? You don't want your accounts going to your former spouse if you're divorced. If you've had somebody pass away and they're still listed as one of your beneficiaries, you want to make sure that that's updated and you have your new beneficiaries on there. So those are important, like check-ins to do too, when you're working with your advisor or whoever's managing some of your accounts. If your accounts are with your company, you all get busy, but we've got to make time to go online and see how we've made those designations.
Those are really good points. So I think recapping some of the really strong financial foundation items would be around emergency savings and retirement accounts, planning around that, always the insurance and protections that you mentioned, estate planning information and beneficiaries, making sure they're updated. Those are great tips for our listeners. Sylvia, thank you so much for joining us on Fuller Expectations to provide this really helpful information about financial wellness in the back half of life. And for our listeners out there, I just wanted to mention that I am going to link the website for the Guinan Financial Strategy Group of Wells Fargo Advisors. That is Sylvia's business. Her website provides amazing information, so that will be linked in the show notes. And we are so appreciative of this conversation today. Thanks for listening today. If this episode sparked something in you, please share it with a friend, leave a comment or a review, and reach out and let me know what resonated. Remember, no matter what age or stage of life you're in, you can pivot. And always remember, the second half of life is not a winding down. It's a waking up. Please follow or subscribe. We'd love to have you as part of our podcast family. Let's keep showing up and being the best version of ourselves. Until next time, take care.